Okay. Okay, great. So I think we are live. First of all, Assalamu alaikum and welcome everyone to Beacon House School Systems 13th edition of their School of Tomorrow event. Over the years, this platform has grown. It's brought thought leaders, thinkers from around the world onto one platform. And today, this session, it just gives me so much pleasure to speak to all of you. I think we're going to have a very exciting session on the topic at hand, which is deepfakes, seeing is no longer believing. Just a quick note for those of you tuning in locally and internationally, we will be taking in your questions every now and then, so you can plug your questions, your comments into the chat box, and you can ask questions directly to any of our panelists, and we will take them and get them answered for you. A little bit about me. My name is Sonya Rehman. I'm an independent journalist and an entrepreneur. I'll be your moderator this evening. Our session is for 1 hour, so let's start. I'll start off with introducing Mr. Yasir Khan. Mr. Yasir Khan is the Principal Product Manager Technology at Amazon Alexa. Then we have Mr. Ajit Punj, a principal software engineer at an AI startup based out of California. He holds a master's degree in electrical engineering from Stanford University. Then we have Ms. Ayesha Nasir. She's a graduate from Columbia School of Journalism. Ayesha has worked for a number of local and international media houses. She's also the founder and currently runs this fantastic platform on parenthood and motherhood. It's called Scary Ammi, and she's really carved quite a niche for herself in Pakistan over the past year or so. So thank you so much for being with us. Then we have Mr. Badar Khusnood. He's the co-founder of fishery.com. It's an e-commerce platform which empowers hundreds of retail brands and artisans and entrepreneurs in Pakistan. He's consulted for Google, Facebook, Twitter in the country for over a decade. Then we have Mr. Nikhil Chandok. He's the Senior Director, AR, Platform and Products at Facebook. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. And I really hope to have an exciting session with all of you. Okay, so just one thing before we kick off for this session on deepfakes, seeing is no longer believing. I'd just like to request that since this topic is pretty vast, could we, approach it from a very layman's perspective, because this is a relatively new technology, which is fast evolving. And I'd really like those of us tuning in, your audience particularly, to really understand this technology, the pros and the cons, because there's so much material out there and it's pretty interesting and, if I may add, a bit frightening at the same time. So I suppose my first question is, so far the cons of deepfakes, deepfake technology is alarming in the sense that it can be used to be weaponized against women, pretty much vis-a-vis pornographic material. I was, reading up on deepfakes. In 2019, they did a study, and I think over 90% of material online was pornographic material where female celebrities and females had been superimposed onto porn stars, etc. Then, there's the issue of hoaxes and frauds, yellow journalism, misleading the public. So my question is, where do we stand in the world today vis-a-vis this technology? I'd like to start with Mr. Nikhil first, please.
I think there are two sides to every piece of technology, right? So there is the sort of the main use case, and then there is the sort of all the ways in which it can be abused. I'd say two things. One is obviously the curve of the adoption of the curve at which the technology changes is really steep. So new things, new ways to create fakes are always coming out. And they typically start off being a way for creative expression. We had this feature in like the Instagram camera we shipped, which was some way, if I could take a video of you, I don't know if we shipped it, but we definitely played with it. And we could make you dance like Michael Jackson. And it's a fake, but you could be doing the moonwalk like Michael Jackson. You could be doing the whole Thriller video. And then you could put your friends in the video. And if you've seen the Thriller video, you will understand like what I'm saying and why it's so interesting. So why is that a good use case? Well, as humans, we are constantly looking for new ways to express ourselves. We want to be creative. We want to do interesting new methods of creative expression. So that's the main use case. And then, yes, there are a lot of dark use cases, like a lot of use cases that you can say are not good and not lawful. So I don't see it as like stopping anytime soon. I think like it will get, the fakes will get more realistic. You're just seeing visual fakes. Voice will show up in a way. I mean, it has shown up. I'm sure you guys have seen it. So if I want to speak like somebody else, it'll be very easy to construct somebody's voice with saying some things. And I think like this is going to be a real problem in politics moving forward. So I'd say like that's the nature of technology. It's changing. We can't stop it. It's just machines. They get smarter every year. The question is, how do we create a society that knows how to navigate this? So the same way I think we have now learned to navigate the internet or print for that matter, where you can make fakes on print. People just don't believe everything they read, right? So, but with fakes, that's not true. So I think the question is, how do we get there as a society? How do we learn to navigate this new piece of technology? But I think trying to contain it, trying to stop it, is just not going to work. So I'll stop there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Nikhil. Ayesha, given your background as a journalist, working for some really big media houses and now running this fantastic platform, Scary Yummy, could you tell me, where do you think we stand vis-a-vis deepfakes, vis-a-vis this technology? How can it impact the media industry as a whole?
So thank you, Sonya, for the question. I think what's really scary about deepfakes is how it's being adopted by like large companies. So like the mobile app giant Momo's created an application called Zao, through which like any user can basically superimpose their face on television. In Japan, there's a company called Data Grid that's creating technology that allows full body deepfakes. And then so basically, just carrying on from what Nikhil was saying, that deepfakes are becoming with big companies stepping up and like major app giants taking this technology on board, it's becoming so mainstream that there's really no way around it. But I feel this is part of the evolution of any media. So when journalism was evolving, there was a time when journalism was really another name for propaganda. Like that's kind of how it began back in the United States. So it wasn't really like journalism in the form of objective journalism and unbiased. And these words weren't really how journalism began. These came after these came much later when the First Amendment came. But much earlier on, journalism was basically just propaganda. Like anybody would put out a piece of document or something just mentioning their point of view, which could be biased and which could be just based on marketing a product. And then given the need from the people to hear both points of views, to hear objective journalism, that is when the idea of journalism as we know it today has evolved. And then I feel journalism's gone through another evolution where now people don't really want unbiased reporting. They want to know the opinion of the person. They want people to take stances. You saw that with 9/11, with like New York Times reporters and reporters on television actually breaking down and people responding positively. So I feel it's evolved, and I feel similarly the idea of authenticity on the internet is going to evolve. So right now, the deepfakes is still something that not the average person understands, but this idea is picking up again and again. So under COVID-19, you saw a lot of like, don't Google it. Everything you're Googling about the vaccine isn't true. Wait to hear from experts. So I feel that gradually, as the idea of deepfakes becomes more clear, two people and people start understanding that, video swapping and photo swapping and voice swapping is taking place, and you can't even believe a video that looks like you and sounds like you and says, I don't like, some things with deepfakes are very scary. So there was this research done in the US where deepfake technology actually led to some engineers inserting cancer on x-rays in a hospital. So that's really scary if you're manipulating sacred results, like medical results. But on the other hand, I feel it's going to lead to a greater degree of speculation on the basis of people and a greater need for verified information to come out. So under COVID, and especially even now, I've seen that a lot. There's lots of rumors about AstraZeneca, but unscary on me because one of our motives is, connecting mothers to authentic sources of information. There's a lot of demand from mothers saying, can you get doctors to come on and talk about AstraZeneca? So hopefully, once people become aware of deepfakes to the degree that I don't feel they're aware today, once they do become aware, then I feel there will be a paradigm shift in how we perceive information, and gradually the need for verification will become much greater.
Absolutely, Ayesha. Thank you so much for that. And in fact, you were talking about data. I was reading an article in The Guardian, and the author was basically talking about how our biometric data could be at risk as well vis-a-vis this technology. Mr. Yasir Khan, my question to you is, why do we need a parallel world of false imitation? What are the benefits of it? If I could just add one note over here, which really stood out for me vis-a-vis one amazing advantage of deepfakes, and that is vis-a-vis the voice, technology for the voice. Those people who've suffered, let's say, terrible accidents and they've lost their ability to speak. Maybe this technology could help them, speak again through AI. But why do we need this technology, in your opinion?
Yeah. First I'll answer your question with a quick story. So first, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Greetings. So I think, Sonya, and quick disclaimer, opinions are my own, etc. I think the reason why people need or are seeming to be adopting these parallel, worlds are, maybe captured by this little cartoon, because there's reality and then there's a virtual. And as a result, reality is hard. It's not often pretty. It's tough. It's for many of us, it's a very, very tough existence. It should be better. But now when you have these portals, when you have these windows into perhaps a more rosier environment where, you feel safer, more empowered, or whatever the case may be, it's enticing. Your mind loves it. And like Nikhil mentioned, there's a creative expression angle to it. There are both the good and the bad aspects of it. For me, when I first learned about deepfakes, I remember it was about 2 years ago. I'm a huge science fiction fan. I believe in envisioning the future you want to get to. The trailer for the new Star Wars movie came out. I was there sipping my chai. I was nerd raging about it on WhatsApp, like any fan does. And my buddy sent me this video of the man who made Star Wars, George Lucas, the video. And George Lucas was totally agreeing with me, right? He was ripping the trailer apart. I was like, yeah, you tell them, George. And then he started ripping his own movies apart. And I was like, wow, I guess he had a change of heart. And the more he did that, the funnier I thought. But I was like, being a geek that I am, I was like, wait, I don't think he would ever actually say that. And it wasn't until my buddy told me that this thing was a deep fake, that, this is a fake George, and this is real George, right? Fake George, real George. And he had to look really, really closely and maybe some lip movement or something. And I was like, whoa. Why is it called a deep fake? I thought it was a real guy speaking, right? So I think, with this parallel dimension, everything that Ayesha just mentioned about the need to trust, the need to have a next layer of authenticity, the need to grow with this, grow with the technology and have it adapt to what we needed to do as opposed to us reacting to the technology, becomes critical. And I think that, if there's any one message, that we can get from today is like, I'm really glad that forums like SOT exist. Because back to science fiction, I think the broader story, whether it's deepfakes, is the idea of synthetic people, or the idea of imagining a reality has existed for some time. It's just now that the mainstream is waking up to it. And so what I would encourage the audience to do, for example, is start thinking about the future, imagining the future that you actually want to get to. And that all these things, whether it's deep fake or synthetics or all these other technologies coming up, will have a much stronger opinion about how we should react to it or how we should guide it. And my hope is, and it's sometimes you might feel like a lonely optimist, but my hope is that by doing so, we can guide it to a better tomorrow by working all together.
Absolutely, Yasir. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, I think that is super optimistic, a viewpoint to look at this technology. Mr. Badar Khusnood, what do you think? Do you feel this technology has a lot of promise, or do you think it can be used for more insidious, used in more insidious ways in the world?
Thank you so much, Sonya. I think absolutely, as you mentioned, I think something we need to realize right now, since you highlighted the fact that we should speak from a layman's perspective, generally speaking. So I think one thing we need to realize is that most of the deep fake examples or videos we see today online are mostly of celebrities or popular people, because to create those deep fakes, you need a lot of sample data. And that sample data is generally available in public of popular people or celebrities, and hence you see those examples coming out from them, first of all. Secondly, so we need to realize that someone really, at this point in time, maybe technology in future or in very near future might be able to generate deep fakes from very small sample set as well. But right now, it really needs a larger data set. And even then, they still have some level of confidence where you can say that a countering technology can detect deepfakes as well. So there is good technology and then there is bad technology, and from a very layman's perspective. So the good technology can, and all big brands, larger brands, and even other companies are working towards the better side of it as well, which can detect the wrong side of it. The challenge is that technology always has been neutral. It is not the technology which is bad or good. It is more about who's using that technology. It is the driver of that technology who determines whether I'm using this car as a suicide bombing car or as an ambulance. It's more like a knife. You can use it in your kitchen for day-to-day tasks, or you can actually use it to kill someone. So technology is absolutely very neutral. And I think we need to realize the fact that there are people behind it, or organizations or institutions, or even countries or groups of countries who may be using it for other purposes as they deem fit for themselves. So there are people behind it who have other interests, and hence and now the technology can facilitate. So deep fakes technically have existed in a very raw form for probably decades, since there was cinema or there were other basic video formats. But now they have all evolved into more realistic deep fakes, which are not easily identifiable by a layman with a human eye. So you need tools, you need support, you need to understand a bit of technology to really understand and differentiate between the real news and the fake news, or the reals and the fakes. So I think it is more about educating our people, making sure that we understand who's using that technology and why. Technology itself right now is not really doing it. There is someone behind it. So we need to really understand the politics of it, and even the socio-economic motives behind it as well.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Badar Khusnood. I think something that you said really stood out for me, that technology is neutral. And it's basically those using it that can either go rogue or use it for good. Mr. Ajit Punj, could you tell me what your opinion is on this technology? Again, coming back to the first question, why do we need it?
Yeah, sure. So, try and take a viewpoint that maybe hasn't been discussed as much so far, but I definitely, well, first of all, I wish I had some visual tools like Yasser did. That was amazing. But I think I share very similar viewpoints as Badar. Like he was saying, a lot of it depends on regulation as well, right? So, or not even regulation, but I would say countering or identifying deepfakes. So it is such a new technology. I don't think it's, it definitely has been around, like Photoshop has been around for a while, but the barrier to entry there was maybe owning Photoshop or knowing how to use it. There's, it's a very complicated tool. Nowadays, you can probably drag and drop a picture onto a website and, spit out something that would take maybe hours to do in Photoshop 10 years ago. So, the technology is definitely becoming more and more accessible. And I will say that, in the same way that, countering, I guess the term is fake news or like false information, right? During a certain presidential election, on different social media platforms, you could see labeling that, this information has not been verified or fact checking has proven this to be not true. Similar things will need to happen with deepfake videos and deepfake pictures and such. Straying from that for a second, what is the benefit of deepfakes? Yeah, I mean, technology, I also believe, is inherently neutral, right? Anyone can take it and weaponize it, but the intention of creating it is for good, right? So how can, different use cases could be like, Sonya, you mentioned, taking someone who lost their voice maybe and being able to extrapolate that and give someone those tools. I don't know if this is technically a deepfake, but Google's feature to maybe call a restaurant without any user intervention, right? So faking a voice, making reservations, stuff like that. I think it becomes a really powerful tool for, society to use. But of course, then there's the downside of weaponizing it. And, obviously, so I think some of the original use cases were for malicious use cases as well. Obviously, leading up to the presidential election again, people were very afraid of like videos coming out. And I think people are using it as a scapegoat too. Like, oh, that could be a deepfake, like just throwing that out there that, you never know what's real anymore. So I think, in the same way that there's ethics of AI committees and such, it'll take a collection of people and possibly corporations to and government regulation as well to really step up and label false information in the same way. And regulation always kind of falls behind technology, but I think fighting it isn't going to help, right? We really need to make sure we adopt it as a society and really treat it well. I think, definitely one kind of anecdote I wanted to share was, different AI models, like a lot of these algorithms have been around for so long, but the barrier to entry there is compute, right? So training certain models, like there are figures online where training certain models could cost like in the millions of dollars 10 years ago. But as compute and infrastructure and all this accelerates, it becomes, almost free to train models or run inference on models. So this technology is becoming more and more accessible to people. So I think pretty much anyone can go online right now and create their own deepfake. So as technology becomes more prevalent, it definitely takes a collection of people to try and right the wrongs, so to speak.
Okay, super. I was just thinking about, the media at large, and, for some reason, I really do feel this technology can go totally rogue. My question is like, and Ayesha, touching upon the media industry again, COVID, the pandemic, don't you think this technology will further fuel a zero trust society where people won't be bothered to, fact check if something is correct or false. And number two, that they won't have any tools like the normal Twitter user reading an article online or watching, a deepfake video won't have the tools and awareness to fact check. So don't you think it just makes people, very confused about what is right and what's wrong? So
I completely agree. I mean, I think the the deepfake technology can go rogue. There have been many examples of it going rogue and even tricking like CEOs into transferring monies into accounts just because through deepfake, the audio voice was completely imitated. And then there have been deepfakes of Barack Obama made, Donald Trump made, which obviously led to like outrages amongst their own support camps. So that's absolutely true. But on the other hand, I feel that, it will also hopefully fuel, not positive, but it will make us a more thinking, asking, questioning public, which I feel we're not. So in Pakistan and in the US, like I worked over there, and the public is just as gullible, and there's huge amounts of people who will believe anything they say, which then leads to a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of problems that are, that they lead to a lot of biases, etc. So I feel that now people will start questioning the source. So while the deep fake video can be a complete deep fake, an authentic source or a journalist of good standing would never put it out without knowing the source. So in journalism, everything's traced back to the source. It's not just like nobody looks at a photo or a video or an audio or a piece of information without knowing the source and where it comes from. And, sources are really everything. Like, as we've seen with so many of the big cases in the United States that are in terms of journalism exposés, it's all about the sources. So I feel that hopefully people will start asking these questions more. Okay, who said this? Who put this out there? And that's really what we want and what we need, a questioning public, a public that's willing to ask the tough questions, analyze information. Like, we don't really want a public that's going to take information that's coming in and just kind of accept it and make their own opinions and biases. And you saw that with the Israel-Palestine crisis, about how depending on who was reporting, the stories were so different that you saw a lot of people coming out and saying, well, if you're listening to this story, look at who is saying it. If you're looking at these numbers, look at who is saying that. And I think that's really important for the public at large to do. Because when they don't do that, when we don't have like a listening, thinking, analyzing public, then that is where, information can be misinterpreted and can lead to long-standing differences. Like wherever there's a conflict in the world, Pakistan, India, or Palestine, Israel, you've seen that happen again and again, where who is saying something completely reshapes the technology, reshapes the narrative.
Absolutely, Ayesha, thank you for that. So I guess it brings us to the question, how can a layman spot a deep fake video or audio? Nikhil, I'd like to pose that question to you. How can you spot a deep fake?
I mean, there is no
certainly not an easy question, Sonya. Not a simple one, but
I don't think there is I don't have an answer, like how to spot a deep fake. I mean, I think there are obviously poorly done fakes where you can see like flaws in the fake essentially, and you're able to determine that like this is not right. I think the one simple rule is similar to what Ayesha was saying, is basically challenge the source. And like I think you cannot really look at a piece of video or listen to a piece of audio and say, is this fake or not? I think you have to apply judgment about like where it comes from, and that fundamentally is going to signal how much truth there is in this like piece of content. So that would be my. Now this means that like you have to then cultivate like truthful sources, and then you have to be an informed individual, like Ayesha was saying, which is not easy to do. So that's at least today. And I think like this is sort of off tangent, but I do think in the future there will be technologies where my hope is we are able to we move into a world in which a lot of the content is signed using cryptography. And if it is signed, then we know, like, who signed it at the origin of the content. And if that is true, then we can start assigning some amount of like signal or societal value to different signatures, even if they are like created by like fake personalities. and start tracking like who is creating these videos, because right now the video comes in your chat app, you don't know where it came from. It sort of moved through a bunch of networks and landed with you. So I think there is a technical solution. It won't obviously be a silver bullet, but like one way to authenticate sources, like Ayesha was pointing out too, is like this idea that, hey, maybe we can have cryptographic signatures on the content that is created, and if that is true, then maybe you don't have, maybe then you can look at the signature and like say, I expect this to like show up in the next few years. But to work at the scale of the world is very complex, because cryptography is not like the most user-friendly technology. So I'll stop there. But yeah, there's no obvious way of detecting a fake.
So I just want to add to that. Isn't Microsoft and Facebook, aren't they developing like technologies? Because I remember reading about Microsoft saying that they're going to develop a technology and an AI-based technology to detect deepfakes. I think they made this announcement last year, so I don't think they've developed it. And I've read about Facebook also doing it. I don't know how far they've gone, but I think, soon enough, like some deepfakes would be tagged by Microsoft or by Facebook and maybe even Google as being deepfakes. Like, I don't know if they can do it for all, because the deepfake technology is also improving. But there were press releases that I read. I don't know how far those programs have gone, but
no. So I don't know. I don't work very closely with that team at Facebook, but we have invested in, like, this is a real challenge for us, because if people perceive Facebook as a place where there are only fakes, then it, like, people don't use the website or use the property and such. So we have technologies, but the same machines, it's so interesting about the technology, like the same machines that are used to detect the technology can also be used to make fakes. And like Yasser's shaking his head, because like Yasser works in AI, and like, Ajit works in AI, like it's the same concept. It's like to detect a fake, you should be able to make a fake. You should be able to tell a fake. That means you can make a fake. And then and so, like, maybe Ajit can explain, like, he's the AI guy, he can explain GANs and how GANs are used over here. Maybe we're getting technical, but like, you have these generational networks that can create all of this media, and because it can create it, there's another network essentially is able to detect it using the same like methodology. Ajit, do you want to speak to it, or Yasser, like how GANs work and how GANs work on deepfakes?
If I could just say one thing, let's get a bit techie. If you can just tell us a little bit about encoders, decoders, and GAN. I think it would be super beneficial for the layman like myself tuning in.
Over to you, Ajit, for that one.
I'll do my best. Again, I'm more of an electrical engineer, but definitely been dabbling in AI. So encoder, decoder, and GANs, all familiar terms to me. GANs are general adversarial networks, right? So in a way I think they were developed in a way to kind of use less data. Now, I think a really important thing about AI is to understand garbage in, garbage out, right? If you have bad data or fake data, biased data, right, you're going to get wrong results or bad results. So there's really no good substitution, in my opinion, to just good labeled data, right? Strong data sets. So general adversarial networks are a way to maybe generate some input where your network can then label, get an output, right? So you're generating data and then classifying based on that. Encoders and decoders are a little bit more, I think, generally using like transformer models, so language models and stuff. It's a way to, again, do some classification and I mean, in language models, right, you can do some encoding on a word, on a dictionary set, and do some decoding to, once you have some internal hidden data labeling, you can then get some classification based on it, right? So if you have a text-based input, you can then, I guess, classify like, different things based on that with that encoder-decoder model. I think generally the trend has been more towards just using encoders too. And I know there's like vision transformer models where, I guess generally like that's vision is or image data is pretty useful for GANs as well. But in the sense that transformers were primarily language models, now you can move away from convolutional networks and stuff and use the same kind of backbone to have image data processed in the same way. So classifying maybe you can segment, a person and a shopping cart or something from an image of someone in a grocery store. Yeah, that's generally a sense of what they're used for. So I think GANs, like Nikhil was saying, is useful for doing some classification and detection based on that, based on some like generated data. That's kind of how you can maybe detect a deepfake, but then use that in a counterproductive way as well.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think like riffing on Ajit, what you just mentioned about the transformer neural nets and such, and Ayesha and Nikhil, a few points you raised. I think the thing with deepfakes is so 3 comments. First, the tech itself, like the guts that as Nikhil pointed out are in this constant race. The one get better on one side, get better on the other side. Is all abstracted behind a lot of very simple, relatively simple user tools. And Ayesha, to a point that you mentioned earlier, it is those simple tools that make it easy to harness all the hard technology that Ajit's talking about into simple interfaces. So like the Tom Cruise fake, for example, what they did was they had a lookalike of Tom Cruise. He's like a professional actor who does parodies. Then they had like Ajit was mentioning, training data from actual videos of Tom Cruise. There's a lot of that online. And then they had simple tools where you could like start masking like this face from here, putting it over here, and then like pressing a couple of buttons. Okay, it's not that simple. It actually took that guy a bit of time. There's a great video on by Vice on YouTube to go watch it, and it's that simple, unfortunately. But I think that looking for like tech-only solutions in the sense of like even if I was to wave my wand, my magic product wand, and to give you a stamp that says this video is fake, like for example, would you still trust me? Because at the end of the day, like I should like I just want to totally emphasize the point that you brought up, which is like you have to be the type of person who is willing to accept that maybe what you're seeing is not what you want to see. Conversely, no matter how much evidence or technology or data I gave you, you see what you want to see. And that's the entire premise with virtual reality. You can tune it out. You're only looking for what you want to look for, and nothing I can say, do, or otherwise will change your mind, unless you're willing to be changed or you have people you trust, perhaps, that can help change you. And so I think for me, again, it's about like zooming out and looking at the bigger picture of how all this plays together and where we want to go with it. And parting thought on that one, like Sonya, you mentioned earlier, you and Ajit were talking about some of the use cases of virtual reality and such, and potentially positive ones. So we mentioned a lot of negative ones. There's some positive ones, like using deepfakes. What if you can connect as a fan to your favorite celebrity, so you can be in many places at the same time? Parody is my favorite. You saw that in the video. What if you could bring back historic figures? Like, would you like to talk to the founder of your country, of your town? Would you like to pass this on to more generations beyond you? Of course, all sorts of questions. Don't get me wrong. We get it. All sorts of questions like rights and blah blah blah. You can memorialize your loved ones. Talk to your grandpa. You can do it yourself. Like, if this was a TV show, this would be the moment that I say that I'm actually an avatar or like a deepfake and the real Yasser is still sleeping over there. But no, it's too many bags from the eyes. A total giveaway. And I think the thing I'm most excited about, not of deepfakes, to be clear, but of the broader virtual reality and like technology and science fiction, is can this be a tool for empathy? Ayesha, you were talking about two sides to different stories. Can we use these type of technologies to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes? Can we use these type of technologies to really feel like what it actually felt like on the other side of a conflict? That we have a lot more in common than we have different. And for me, that's what I want to see from all these different technologies, is something to bring us together as opposed to taking us apart. Okay, sorry, I know that totally went in a different direction, but yeah, you guys raised a lot of interesting points. I'm just geeking out over.
Okay, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Yasser. I'm just going to quickly check our chat box. Okay, I'm taking our first question. The capacity to generate deepfakes is proceeding much faster than the ability to detect them. What are your thoughts on that? I think someone's already answered that, but if anyone wants to take that on.
Sonya, I'd like to add a few thoughts from a very, and sorry for very being candid thoughts here. So, we need to even, as I said, we need to kind of eat the elephant bit by bit and break it up and see how it works. So remember, most of the technological advancements are initially funded by majority of the departments of defenses in either of the geographies. So remember, tech is coming from one perspective when it's initiated, generally speaking. And then it really transforms into the use. I mean, even internet itself started from Department of Defense, and then it actually transformed into entertainment, and then an average user's or a layman's kind of a handheld tool. So I think, first of all, that just wanted to bring that perspective to it, that we need to see where the tech is coming from. And it again substantiates my previous point that totally depends on who's running it and who's behind it. Secondly, it is not about identifying a fake or a deep fake. These are geopolitical complexities from a very policy standpoint of view. For example, someone's terrorist is someone's freedom fighter. So as we all have discussed, which news do you want to read and trust is the question. And who do you want to really support? So, and both sides are using this technology in both good and bad side. But so we need to really understand that it is more of a geopolitical scenario and different. And again, I'm not taking any sides. I'm just bringing this to the table for conversation and food for thought. And I think what we need to do is we need to understand, and I think from for the next generations, what we need to do is improve our education. So, what we say in Urdu, talim or tarbiyat, I think it's not just the talim factor, the tarbiyat needs to come in more strongly now. The need of tarbiyat is far more now, when you need to actually not just teach our children with just standard topics, but to enable them to think, have critical thinking and understanding of these issues on how to differentiate between good and bad. Not saying which side, but again, good or bad is something, and they need to understand how can they do it, and that needs to be inculcated at early stages, because they are the most vulnerable, by the way. They are right now using the technology the most, and they are the most vulnerable at this stage, and we need to help them understand this. So there are two, I would say, age brackets which are the most vulnerable, either the children or the people who were digital immigrants and not natives. So, the ones who were immigrants would believe in every forwarded WhatsApp message. And I think that's where the big tech is, at least even if they can't help you detect it, they can help you with certain markers and notifications on how best to make a better decision. So you now see in WhatsApp, it says forwarded many times, which means WhatsApp is helping you understand that this information may not be true, and you should, as a responsible citizen, look into the sources, as we have discussed earlier, but they at least try to help you identify. Similarly, if you notice in the COVID situation, both Facebook and Google, wherever there is a COVID-related article or a video, it says for official information, please click on .gov. whatever the official government link for that region or geography or territory is. And I think then, so I think the tools are trying to help average people understand and connect and differentiate between good news and the fake news, or the real information or the fake information. But then there is a question whether people really want the government to tell them or tools to tell them, or they want this to decide on their own whether what is right or wrong. And this actually brings us to the next conversation of blockchains and the cryptocurrencies, where a certain portion of the societies do not want to be regulated by the central banks. They want to make a decision of their own currency and value creation and value holding on their own between two parties as a peer-to-peer thing. So just wanted to bring this from a very end user, average user, layman's perspective, that Ajit's technology and Nikhil's and Yasir's deep tech conversation is something which some of us may be able to understand, but I think from an average perspective, these are very challenging questions and foods for thought as to what needs to be done and how we should probably look at it from different perspectives. Sorry for a longer conversation there.
That was great. Thank you so much, Mr. Khusnood. I'd just like to read out this quote. It's by Lillian Edwards. She's a leading expert in internet law. The quote is as follows: "The problem may not be so much the faked reality as the fact that real reality becomes plausibly deniable." And that's really something that you touched upon, Yasir. You believe what you want to believe at the end of the day, correct?
Yeah, sorry. This is the meme nowadays, looking for the mute button and tracing it all the way over. I think, and I think I'm hearing that theme from many of us, which is the, at the end of the day, we're people, and as people, we are, dispositioned to, see what we want to see or believe what we want to believe, and that's, something that we've been doing as humanity for some time, and we've evolved our trust as we go along. And for me, this is, everything we're talking about today is just one more story in that broader arc about how do we build trust and trust each other, and how do we evolve and trust more.
Okay, super. I'm just going to, it's been 46 minutes. I bet all of you are just completely exhausted, but I'm just going to add a question or two. Right. Okay, this is a really good question. What rights do individuals have to privacy when it comes to the use of technology? How do privacy laws and data protection acts play a role? That's a really important question. Would anyone like to respond to that?
I can, if others don't want to deep dive into it. From a very policy standpoint of view, again, this is absolutely important. The tools are evolving every single day. And, with every new feature coming in, there's a new requirement of privacy understanding on how to even set up your basic social media tools. And that's something which is, and people need to understand, there's a trade-off between features and privacy. So if you want your phone or one of your apps to give you directions going back home, and you want it to know your home location and also your office location, or if you want a voice-assisted kind of answering machine or a tool which can help you with your questions over voice, this means you have to allow that tool to use your mic. If you want camera to be really activated instantly whenever you want to take a photo, this means you want your device to have that camera facility instantly available. And again, as we earlier discussed, once you have that technology, either of the technologies can be misused or used positively. So we need to understand what we are letting go of when we are allowing and clicking quickly, I accept on a free tool. That is something when we need to read between the lines and those fine print, because what we are letting go. And most of the tools today have this feature where they say, allow this tool XYZ to collect data on anonymized data for your product or service, whatever it is, so that they can improve the product at the back end. But these things are so deeply engraved in the settings that an average person doesn't really understand those. So again, it goes back to the level of education and understanding and really understanding. So for example, if you want your Maps app to really know when you went where, and you want to really track your probably your health or your walk pattern or whatever, you need to give that app a permission. And now if you notice, all the operating systems, mobile operating systems, are giving you some level of control where they allow you to allow an app give permission only when you're using that app, so that it's not using it in the background, those permissions. So now we are going to permissions and all of those. So I think my high level point is that when you use an advanced app, and you want certain level of functionality, remember you have to let go of certain level of privacy, because it has to build patterns for you based on your data, and they need data to build those patterns and hence give you that level of functionality. So it's a little tricky question, and we need to understand what level of functionality we want and what level of privacy we want, and then it's, I think it's very personal. It varies person to person. Some people are pretty open about it, and some people are very conservative about it. Nothing is wrong or right. I think we need to learn to probably configure apps and devices as we like and tweak them, so that we know how much of privacy am I letting go of versus what kind of feature set I'm getting against it, and is it worthwhile for me?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ms. Ayesha, did you want to add a comment? I was just reading your comment in the chat box regarding fake news and hoaxes in the media.
Yeah, so I'll be really quick. So to me, the emergence of deepfakes and the emergence of other technologies that can be used to boost frauds is really going to impact the media and information industry the most. So in the last a decade or maybe 12 years, you've seen a huge change from, I remember when I was at Columbia, everybody thought that they would get their news from the New York Times or the BBC or the Washington Post. And that changed literally in a decade, where citizen journalism came up and people were like, we don't need to, wait to read it in the New York Times when somebody on the internet is telling us, when a YouTuber is telling us, when, so citizen journalism really picked up. And I think the last decade was the decade of citizen journalism. But I think with what we're seeing now, and literally it led to major newspapers shutting down, printing presses closing, overall journalists being sacked. So it really led to the decline of mainstream journalism. Now, I think what we're seeing is the exact opposite. With with a deregularized economy of citizen journalism, proving that that is no longer the right way to get information, because there's no way to know that the person you're getting it from is an avatar or a real person or a dead person. There's no way of knowing. So I think we're going to go back to wanting to get information from people who are qualified, from people who are trained as journalists. And for the first time, there's talks amongst thinkers about how journalism might become a licensed profession. So right now you don't need a license to be a journalist. I have a degree, and there's a huge debate at Columbia, do we even need degrees? Should we even be spending the money? Because you actually don't need a journalism degree to apply to a to any newsroom. But now there are lots of talks about, but now we need it, because the only way to combat what we're seeing right now, and this is just the beginning, deepfakes is just the beginning. We're going to go on to see so many more fraudulent exploitations of information that it's going to be impossible to figure out what is real and what is not, unless and until we regulate the industry of information, and we basically regulate those who are giving out the information. So we know, okay, this person, this is his profession. He's not going to go out and make deepfakes because he's going to lose his license. The same way, medicine is regulated, or law is regulated, or engineering is. So I just thought it was interesting how, literally, we've seen two paradigm shifts from a complete decentralization and the public basically saying, we don't need a regulated newsroom because, my neighbor can give me the news just as well as you can, to now talks about, that was a wrong experiment, and we do need a regulated newsroom, and we do need people who understand news and who understand accuracy and objectivity to come out and give news.
Absolutely, Ayesha. Thank you so much for that. And I think we'll wrap up today's session with Ayesha's last comment. I'd just like to repeat what Mr. Khusnood said, that technology is neutral. That's so very true. And I suppose since this technology is fast evolving, it is relatively new, I think it's imperative to kind of see how it evolves, in the near future. And, for a majority of us laymen who are understanding this technology, it's imperative to see, or just to be more discerning, as a consumer of news, as a consumer of these social media platforms, to try and be as discerning as possible and to not really believe what you're seeing. Thank you so much once again. It was an absolute pleasure, an absolute honor to have all of you part of this session. I'd like to thank all of you on behalf of the Beacon House School System and the School of Tomorrow platform. Thank you so much, and wishing you lots of luck in your fantastic and fascinating careers. Thank you very much. Take care. Khud Hafiz. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.